Office Hours, a weekly live show brought to you by the team at Bunker Labs, a national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping the military connected community start their own business. I'm your host today, Iron Mike Stedman, joined by my co-hosts, Amy Morrison and Kai Blakely. What's going on, Amy and Kai?
Howdy.
Hey, hey.
So, like we always start off, Amy, how about we start by letting everybody know what's going on in the bunker over the next week or so.
Yes, no problem. This week we've got the same events we talked about last week. So October 14th, we've got Bunker Connect in Newark, which Mike says is like an hour away from Newark, but it's the Newark chapter. So that's October 14th at 4 p.m. Eastern. And then Bunker Connect Indianapolis also on October 14th. That's at 6 p.m. Central. And then also want to talk about the Breaking Barriers workshop series. The applications are open through October 15th. So this is a workshop series that we've been doing for a while now, and it's specifically for entrepreneurs and like small business owners who are in specific demographics. So we've got our Black Entrepreneur Workshop Series, Latinx, Female, and Asian. So these are targeted workshop series specifically addressing issues that very early stage startups have with like legal, HR, sales, marketing, like really get into the basics there. And it's also a great opportunity to connect with entrepreneurs who have the same challenges that you do in those specific categories. So applications are open through October 15th, and you can check that app out at bunkerlabs.org/breaking-barriers. And y'all need to apply like today.
Yeah, so I've had a chance to do the marketing and branding for probably 8 or 9 of these workshop series so far. And the thing I'll tell you is that for people that feel, I don't say overwhelmed by veterans and residents or some of these other programs, this is a great like launch pad for it because one, it gets you in a cohort model right off the bat. It's a little bit more hand holding as every series is like structured. They go over a specific topic, but we've just gotten such great feedback from the program already. So make sure that you're taking advantage of these programs and applying. And for those of you that missed out on the VAR application again, or feel like you weren't ready for the VAR application, sign up for the Breaking Barriers workshop series. All right. So I think one thing we should do too for today is we're going to be talking about go-to-market strategies for early stage ventures. And one of the things I was joking with my colleagues about before we went live is, look, I am not Tony Robbins. I am not any kind of marketing or branding guru, right? But I am a proud veteran and entrepreneur. And I've been in the hustle a little over maybe 4 years now. I think so. So I like to think I know a little bit something, but I'm open to pushback, right? So again, these are just me sharing some lessons learned from all the different ventures I've launched, as well as, what I've heard from founders that I've had a chance to interview on the Transition podcast, as well as other podcasts I've been a part of. And one of the reasons I want to bring this topic up is I would like to think in the bunker, one thing I've seen through all these workshop series, through the various in residences, we have a lot of entrepreneurs at various different stages, right? You've got the growth stage, you've got people that are out there raising capital, but then you got a large portion of the community that are still in that very early stage. And one of the things I feel like we don't talk about enough in a lot of our incubators and accelerators, as someone who's been in like 8 or 9 of them at this point, is like, how do you actually go to market? You know what I mean? It's like, how do you actually drive and generate revenue? Because we'll do the value proposition, right? We'll create the elaborate marketing plan and we'll have the business plan. But it's like, no, like how? Like, how do you make this possible? And so I figure, we could have a discussion about that today. So one of the things I want to talk about is this concept of demand gen. And I'm actually working on a newsletter I'm getting out today for the Transition podcast on demand gen. And in the old school sales and marketing landscape, right, you have the sales funnel. This is not a funnel. That's you got a funnel, right? So at the top of the funnel, you have awareness, then you have interest, and then the whole point is get them actually purchasing and buying. And when you're early stage, right, you just kind of have hopes and dreams and you're launching out this product. You really don't have a lot of time to focus on generating awareness, in my opinion, because early stage businesses go out of business because they can't bring in revenue. They don't have any capital. So what I've learned through demand generation is, instead of focusing on generating awareness at the top, go ahead and flip your funnel upside down, figure out who your ideal buyer is, who that perfect customer is, and then go out and start building rapport with them right off the bat. Now, y'all are saying, "Oh, Mike, that sounds easier. That sounds too easy." Well, easier said than done. Sorry, but when you really think about it, when you start to get into motivation and the psychographs is like, okay, let's say, Kai, give me an example of a company. Let's any company, doesn't matter.
McDonald's.
No, there you go.
Well, let's say, okay, let's say I make wedding cakes, right? I make wedding cakes. All right.
Carrie.
The old model was, oh, I'm going to go online and I'm going to post and I'm going to create all this copy and everything about wedding cakes, etc. And the goal is to get all these leads to fill my funnel. But only a small percentage of them might be in position to want to buy a wedding cake like right now, let alone have the money, right? Well, when you flip the funnel upside down, you're less focused on generating awareness and more focused on who are the people that are already looking for somebody to make a wedding cake for their wedding. And so then you say, okay, well, how do you do that? Well, you start to go on your network. You start asking your network, hey, is there anybody you know that's getting married soon? Right? Or maybe you go find a wedding repository that lists upcoming wedding dates or something, and you start to reverse engineer the process. And the whole goal around that is that when you do get a hold of someone that is positioned to purchase from you, right, they're already like a warm lead. Like they're already seeking the solution that you're providing, instead of trying to convince them, you know, hey, this is something that you actually need. And I think a lot of us in the early stages make the mistake of trying to build too much awareness instead of going out and driving real revenue through those like one-on-one relationships with buyers that are ready to purchase like today. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's related to stuff that we we've talked about several times on various episodes here about, like, you know, finding your niche, like niching down, you know, finding that like specific target demographic, like the more specific, the better in a lot of cases, especially as an early startup. Like, and yeah, like you're going to have to start with your network before you can cast that wider net anyway.
And one of the things I feel like, and for those that are tuning in, please give us some feedback. Let us know your thoughts on, you know, demand gen and modern marketing. But everyone is scared. A lot of people are scared of sales. I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people are scared of sales. And what I have found, in my humble opinion, is that in the early go-to-market stages, right, that marketing that we're talking about, where you flip the sales funnel upside down, it resembles very heavily just traditional sales. You know, finding someone with a problem or a pain point you're uniquely positioned to solve, getting in front of them, and then essentially closing them, you know, closing them and getting them to purchase. So one of the things we're going to talk about too is, okay, so you have this idea. All right. So we're going to flip the sales funnel upside down and we're going to go after them high interest prospects. So the next thing I want you to think about is, how do we actually get these high quality leads, right? And one of the things we talked about is like reverse engineering the process. So how are people already where are people already spending their time? What groups are they a part of? So let's go back to people that are seeking a wedding cake, right? They need a custom cake for their wedding, right? They're probably going to be a part of some kind of Facebook group, right? For newlyweds or people that are planning wedding. They've probably already talked to wedding planners, right? Maybe they're reading or subscribed to some kind of magazine already. And maybe they're listening to podcast or something, right? So you start to reverse engineer this process and start to say, okay, where are they already spending their time at? And then how do we actually get in front of these people? And one of the things that I was writing about today too was, when you start to create your marketing copy or your sales copy, speak to the specific pain point of that ideal buyer. You know, hey, these are three considerations for wedding planners when purchasing their cakes or something. Or these are considerations you need to look for when purchasing a wedding cake, etc. and then really start to really kind of hone in on that and create really compelling marketing copy specifically around that instead of like again the general awareness category.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think hopefully at that point you've kind of already given thought to like your unique selling propositions and things like that. Like, what makes you different? Like, why are your cakes better than Sally down the street or whatever?
Yeah,
And focus on that.
and going back to what you said, in the early days too, it's niching down, like really specifically. So like instead of saying, oh, writing copy about wedding cakes or what you need to consider when purchasing a wedding cake, nationally, right? If I'm in the Nashville area, let's put Nashville on it. Hey,
For sure.
3 considerations wedding planners in Nashville need to consider when purchasing their cake or something like that, right? And that way, again, you go after a tight market, right? You're speaking to that market, and then you're actually able to kind of capitalize on it. The next thing I want to talk about is okay, so we've already talked about flipping the funnel upside down. All right. Now we're starting to create some copy, targeting that specific pain point. Now, the final thing is like, what do you do when you actually get in one on one with these people? Right. And one of the big things I've been talking about is making sure you have some kind of plan. Right. And it goes back to what you said, Amy, leaning into your unfair advantage. Right. Because this is where the relationship piece plays because I think in the early days, especially, right? Like even us right here, we're talking, right? I've already come out and said, look, I'm not Tony Robbins. You know what I mean? I'm not Seth Godin. I'm not some marketing guru. I'm just a veteran that has been doing this process and learning about marketing and branding and entrepreneurship. The same thing applies when you're like going to market. Like, stop pretending to be some big brand. If you're a one-off, wedding cake maker or something, maybe you're doing it out of your kitchen or something. Really lean into that and lean into the relationship that brings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times, right, people try to pretend that we're something that we're not because we assume that's what you need to do to, be successful as a business owner. People say act as if, but part of it is that like, hey, you've got to start getting those initial clients first, and then you can grow into what you have the potential to be instead of trying to pretend like you're something you're not right off the bat.
Yeah, I think setting clear expectations is like really important. Like I I sell stuff online on the shitty little website, but I have to be very clear. I'm not Amazon. You ain't gonna get your stuff tomorrow. Like I'm one person in my office, like shipping some stuff out. It's gonna be a couple days.
Yeah. So this is a little shorter episode today, but I want y'all to think about again, how do you get in the minds of your ideal buyer, that perfect customer, and how do you start driving revenue right off the bat with that perfect customer instead of using the old sales and the old marketing idea of building this funnel and getting all these weak leads. If you're a small business in the early stages, or even if you're a tech startup, to be honest, you've got to get traction, right? Everyone, that's the thing now. You need traction in the marketplace, and you have a better chance of gaining traction with someone that is already is looking for the solution that you're providing. They just don't know it's you yet, right? So anything we can do to hone in on where these people are and get in front of them, because that's the focus of your demand gen efforts. Is you're not trying to get everyone's attention. You're trying to get the attention of people that are already seeking the solution. And a lot of times it's going to start by going after an addressable market that you're uniquely qualified to serve. It could be military spouses. It could be veterans. It could be region based, like we said, Nashville, and really you got to pound pavement. I got a saying in my phone, y'all, business is a contact sport. Because as nice as the online world makes it seem like, right, that we can just post on social media, we can just post on Instagram and Facebook and all these other places, and revenue automatically starts happening when no one knows who we are. No, man, you got to go out there, you got to get sales. And then once you have these people that have already purchased from you, then you can get testimonials from them. You can start accessing their network. And the idea is to get them to like you, love you, pay a premium for your products or services, and then be a great referral source for you. right? And then you use that to drive revenue. I was on with a veteran the other day. He barely does any real go to market stuff. A lot of his business has come just through sheer referrals and
Mhm.
sharing the work he's done for me and other clients, right? And I think again, in the early stages, that's the way to go. Is you got to go out and you got to start driving revenue, because otherwise you don't really know too who your target market really is until they start buying from you. And you have you have an idea, right? You have this assumption that you created with your business plan and your pitch deck. But once you get out in the market is going to let you know who's willing to pay, who's willing to purchase from you.
Mhm.
And I feel like once you find that person, you could start workshop, like you figure out what lines of communication are best for them, and you say, okay, well, this is the ideal customer, and they are only working on this platform, and they're only looking for this type of thing, not that type of thing. So you learn a lot immediately, and if you want to adjust course before you make that big bulk order or finalize that prototype, that might be the best time to do that. Before you scale. So, yeah, I fully agree.
And the nice thing about what we're talking about today, y'all, this works for B2B brands as well as B2C brands, right? So again, if you're coming out with a product, right, don't just throw up the website and the landing page, and expect magic to happen. You have those things, but you actually got to drive traffic to it by getting out at the pop-up marketplace, going to people selling and then sending traffic there. And then on the B2B side, this looks like, hey, actually engaging with CEOs or founders of other companies that you feel like you can serve. So again, I have a newsletter coming out about this today. I'm in the early phases of trying to articulate my understanding on demand gen and creating some playbooks and some frameworks to support the veteran entrepreneurial community and military spouse community. But I hope that this talk today is at the very least getting you to shift your thinking on what actually works for marketing and branding for early stage ventures. Again, you want to go after people that are already positioned to purchase from you, right? You just got to build a relationship with them, and you're going to do that by being one-on-one and being more strategic. And a lot of times, sometimes this might actually mean sitting down and creating a hit list of 20 to 30 high interest warm prospects, not like theorize, like, hey, these people are actively seeking a solution that you can provide. Like, hey, here's a list of 10 to 20 people that are actually looking for a wedding cake, and then go out and say, hey, how do I get in front of them? How do I join their Facebook group? How do I join their associations? You know what I mean? Can I write them a letter or something, right? Just really thinking about outside the box about building rapport. So that's my spiel for today on demand gen. As we wrap up this talk, Amy and Kai, any remarks?
I think a thing to think about, especially when you're early and when you're kind of like what we have already said, but like be authentic, be honest, be, forthcoming about where you are in your, entrepreneurial journey. And like, if you are, talking to your first couple customers, don't pretend like you've got 500 customers. Like, be honest about it. And like, people will be more, I think, willing to work with someone who's like, they know what's going on.
Love it.
And I also think that, like, again, trying to figure out where the holes are in your process from acquiring a customer to actually selling to them and delivering their product. If you're transparent, like Amy says, and they're aware of the hiccups that might come down the line, then you could continue to keep that customer and also figure out what's not working. On there and get more feedback, because the surveys and that kind of information is so important at the early stage, I feel. And then if you become more comfortable in that process, then I think it's easier to sell, because when someone throws a question at you, like, okay, I'm ready to buy. How much does it cost? You're not stuck in now I'm not very confident anymore.
And you can answer those what if questions. What if the cake falls down?
What ifs.
I mean, that's the thing, right? You got to actually know what it is you're selling. A lot of times you think you're selling one thing, but what you're really doing is you're saving this client time. Maybe you're making them look like a superhero, him or her, for Christmas or something. Like you don't really know until you get out there. And so that's the big thing we're saying is once you start having that feedback, man, Don't make people guess, right? keep pressing on it. Now, as we transition to the book recommendation for the week, if you're tuning in, I see Simone Brown made a comment. Leave us a question. Go ahead and put a question in the chat about anything we talked about today. But I want to give a book recommendation for the Entrepreneur's Manual by Richard M. White Jr., Business Startup Spinoffs and Innovation Management. And this book is a little beat up, y'all. It was actually published in the 70s, but I found it at a thrift bookstore for like $4. And one of the things that it goes over really well, which is why I'm recommending this book for today, is he does a whole chapter on market gap analysis. So today we call it niching down, but in any industry, right, you can carve out your own little niche, right? So we talked about wedding cakes, in this example today, right? Well, the wedding cake industry is a big industry, but you could carve out your own niche wedding cake for, families in Nashville, Tennessee, or busy executives in Nashville, Tennessee, or families with a limited budget in Nashville, Tennessee, right? So you create this market gap and then you can exploit upon it. But in addition to that, I like this book because at the time it came out, right? He just has a really interesting take on business ownership. It really lines nicely with this kind of third shift mentality we've been talking about. A lot of you all out there are working full-time jobs, and many people want to work on their ventures full-time. But one of the things that we always recommend is get some traction in your venture before you take the leap, right? So get some revenue, get some sales going, and then that way you can de-risk it because you've already validated your business model. You're bringing in revenue. So it's less of an uphill battle once you join your venture full time. And one of the things it makes it seem like in this book is like in the 70s, that's just the way it was done. It was kind of understood that you worked, 10, 15 hours a day at your full-time job and then transition to working on your side hustle in the evening and early morning. So highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Check it out. And then regarding Simone's question, the results will be announced, I believe, in November. But in the meantime, please go ahead and apply for the Breaking Barriers workshop series. So thanks for your question, Simone Brown. As we wrap up, let me close us out. I'd like to acknowledge our virtual event sponsors for today, which include the MetLife Foundation and the Gannett Foundation. The MetLife Foundation is committed to supporting veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs. In addition, the foundation also provides mentorship and financial health resources to veterans and military spouses transitioning into the workforce. And A Community Thrives, a program funded by the Gannett Foundation and is part of the USA Today network, invest in community building initiatives across the country with the goal of creating positive change through service to historically marginalized or under-resourced group. Thank you to our sponsors, MetLife and the Gannett Foundation, for making this possible. And for everyone that's tuning in, please do me a favor and make sure you subscribe to the Transition Podcast, which is also presented by the MetLife Foundation, where we demystify the entrepreneur experience for veterans and military spouses of early stage startups and small businesses. You can listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast hosting platform. And I greatly appreciate it if you left us a review. I also have a newsletter for the Transition Podcast on Substack. So I release a newsletter every Tuesday and a podcast every Thursday. Substack allows you to leave a comment on each episode. So if you have any questions about your own venture, feel free to post them there as well. I'm always looking for content to feature on the podcast, on the or on the newsletter. So if you share that with us, super helpful. Thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Office Hours. And again, if you have any questions or feedback on the show, feel free to leave them on Facebook or LinkedIn or message us directly. Until next week, everyone, peace, love, and have a great rest of your week.